Councillor member from Prospect, councillors in the Premier's office.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you again, Mr. Speaker, and certainly want to begin by saying good evening to the constituents of Prospect, whom I have the pleasure of representing, and the wider Cayman Islands in general, who are tuned in either live on the CIG YouTube channel or as part of the replay of this evening's and this day's proceedings. I rise, Mr. Speaker, as councillor with shared responsibility for the Ministry of Community Affairs and someone who works closely with the ministry executive leadership on a daily basis on behalf of the Honourable Minister to respond on behalf of the government to this private member's motion number 4, 2018-2019 Caymanian social mobility. I want to begin by thanking the member from Newlands, the Honourable Acting Leader of the Opposition, for bringing this motion, as I believe it is very timely. I know it is well intended, and certainly I hope he will gain a degree of satisfaction from my response. Mr. Speaker, if I may begin by stating that the government shares the concern that the number of social issues faced by Caymanians continues to grow as the country develops. And we agree with the member that only through a collaborative approach can these issues be addressed. Whilst, Mr. Speaker, a great deal of work is currently underway to deal with the consequences of social issues, the government sees and acknowledges merit in the assertion that we have to pay greater attention to the underlying root causes of social issues. However, Mr. Speaker, although, as the member alluded to, the Yolanda Ford report was commissioned in 2006, we believe it still provides a useful guide to the underlying issues and root causes of the social issues which remain relevant to this day. And therefore, in addition to our other local expertise, reports that are commissioned in the private sector, others that are commissioned in the public sector, we believe that the Ford report, combined with other recent related reports, such as the interministerial study on unemployment, which was commissioned under the previous administration by the now Minister of Financial Services, albeit in her former capacity, and written by Dr. Tasha Ebanks-Garcia, that there are a number of steps available to the government and to the country that may alleviate the need to commission yet another further study and will provide meaningful action to address the underlying root causes of the social issues we face, rather than simply seeking to complete another report to identify those root causes yet again. Mr. Speaker, as members are undoubtedly aware, the principal departments of the Ministry of Community Affairs, Counseling Services, the Department of Children and Family Services, they essentially administer services to assist or treat the consequences of social issues, as opposed to addressing the underlying root causes of those social issues. However, as these departments administer services to the individuals affected by the consequences of social issues, the knowledge and information within and derived from these departments are useful, Mr. Speaker, as a starting point in seeking to attempt to address the various social issues. Furthermore, these entities will be moving towards a joint yet specialized approach, Mr. Speaker, to better understand the root causes of the social issues that we face today. As such, Mr. Speaker, in terms of what are the next steps? Well, the government has recently approved the formation of a working group within the Ministry of Community Affairs, the Needs Assessment Unit, and the Department of Children and Family Services to undertake preparation for updated financial assistance legislation and correspondingly enhancement of financial assistance operations. Now, we believe this pre-legislative work may serve to repeal the Poor Persons Relief Law 1997 revision, which the government believes is a law that is both out of date and no longer fit for purpose. But likewise, though some may consider it a minor point, we believe the name of that law is rather derogatory in and of itself and requires revision. Part of this undertaking, Mr. Speaker, involves the reform in which the departments utilize technology to capture and marshal the data submitted to the Needs Assessment Unit for financial assistance. And as the Auditor General pointed out in their workforce management of the Cayman Islands report, which was recently reviewed by the Public Accounts Committee, the government likewise agrees and believes that with improved statistical analysis, then the clients, both present and future, of the Needs Assessment Unit can be stratified or categorized into specific groups representing the various social issues in which are primarily affecting them, whether they be social, economic, health-related, etc. Once this stratification or categorization has been completed, Mr. Speaker, the ministry will then be in a better position to advise the government as to the specific social ills suffered by each of those groups, and thereby allow the government to deploy or coordinate resources across the ministries to analyze each group of clients and treat the underlying root causes of the social issues that they face. And also, likewise, Mr. Speaker, to develop preventative methods to avoid, as much as possible, the root causes being inherited by the next generation. Hence, Mr. Speaker, we envision a range of measures within the Ministry of Community Affairs to create a fertile environment for change. And this includes, just for starters, Mr. Speaker, a modernized financial assistance and social services legislation, which I previously mentioned. Further, develop specialized teams and services within the Department of Children and Family Services that are more targeted. Now, in this respect, the member from Newlands mentioned salaries and education levels as being factors to consider when attempting to identify the underlying root causes of social issues. And while I agree with him, I disagree that we need or require an independent study in order to extract this useful information in the context of Caymanian mobility. We have reports upon reports, and information is not a problem for government, past or present. Reports such as those published by the ESO, the Compendium of Statistics, the Labor Force Survey, or various reports published by the Education Department or otherwise can provide us with useful information which may further be used to inform these specialized teams within the Department of Children and Family Services, which again will be designed to establish the underlying root causes of social issues so that we can address and create preventative measures. Other changes will include the physical housing of related agencies that provide services that address the consequences of social issues by moving them to a single location in order to promote enhanced synergies as well as improved client conveniences, which I'm happy to announce or report has already commenced with the new Workforce Opportunities Residency Cayman, counseling services, and the Department of Children and Family Services preparing to move into Walker's House in downtown Georgetown in 2019, and consideration is presently underway to whether or not the Needs Assessment Unit and MASH, which is of course the multi-agency safeguarding hub, whether they should follow those three departments in 2020, thereby providing their services under a single roof. Other areas that the ministry is looking at is the potential realignment of certain subject areas among ministries for improving policy harmonization and organized actions, and of course, greater coordination and participation with nonprofits and charities, encouraging them to focus their resources in a more targeted fashion. Mr. Speaker, the government is therefore of the view that a further study is not required at this time, but to the contrary, we have sufficient information already available to us that will at least identify to us where to begin to address this problem. And again, from therein, we accept the merit of the mover's motion. Our challenge is now to turn towards tackling the underlying root causes of social issues in a more focused and coordinated manner, rather than wait for the conclusion of yet another study to tell us what we should already know. And as such, Mr. Speaker, it is for these reasons that the government cannot support the motion that calls for yet another study, but instead it's time for us to get on with it, and, well, we are. In summary, Mr. Speaker, please allow me to reassure the opposition and the mover of this motion, as well as the general public, that the future plan of this unity government will be to establish a national strategic plan that will address all of the social issues whilst providing preventative measures to promote, protect, and empower the lives of our Caymanians, especially the most vulnerable. And this isn't new, or this isn't news, Mr. Speaker, because my comments here this afternoon closely mimic the strategy rolled out by the Honourable Premier on behalf of the Unity Government in its strategic policy statement in August 2017, whereby we laid out our 8 strategic goals. However, Mr. Speaker, it is important to understand and to agree as leaders that this effort will require not only adequate funding, but proper planning and the full cooperation by everyone. Not just the Ministry of Community Affairs, but across all ministries, and even across the aisle of this honourable House, spreading as far as wide as into the private sector in partnership. Mr. Speaker, if you will allow me the opportunity to close as the member of Bordentown West did from Scripture. Hebrews 6, verse 11 says, "We want each of you to show the same diligence to the very end, so that what you hope for may be realized." I simply close by saying, Mr. Speaker, that this unity government continues to be diligent in its efforts and strategies towards the fulfillment of its ambitious strategic goals, and with the members of everyone, not only on this team, but I believe in true bipartisan partnership on an issue that impacts all of us, but with the help of every member of this House and in this wider community, we will, by the grace and strength of God, realize all that we hope for, and that is better for our fellow Caymanians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.